Good morning, my people. If you are watching this video, please forgive the do-rag. It's a little before 6 a.m. and in my office where hopefully all the magic happens. I know that some of us are new to planning, and so as I was preparing to, um, I'm actually working on a PDSA professional learning slide deck for some sessions that I'm going to be doing with teachers. And um, as I think I mentioned during PD week, right? My mentor always taught me that we think about education sort of as being a champion athlete, right? And so we're always looking at how something went, looking at how we executed the thing. Did it go the way we wanted it to go? Right. And then we go back and look at the game film, right? And of course, unlike professional athletes, we do not necessarily always have the benefit of 27 cameras that were watching you when it happened. But usually most of us have a pretty good imprint or memory about how a thing happened. And we can go back and unpack it, right? In order to determine what went the way we wanted it to go, what didn't go the way we wanted to go. Did we skip something? Did we miss something? Did a kid throw a boomerang in our direction? And it sort of got us off balance, all of the things that happen. Teaching is as much art as it is science, which is why I think good teaching can be such a complex idea. And so today I'm actually just gonna kind of walk you through some strategies that I think at this point have become second nature to me. And I did not develop them. I promise you, I did not create them. I think like most other good teachers, in most ways, I was made, some of it by exposure to really great teaching and teachers, other of it through study and training and all of that kind of thing. And so the only thing I seek to do in this moment is to sort of share what the planning process looks like for me. So as I mentioned, I am planning what I'm referring to today anyway, and many refer to as a PDSA protocol. So plan, do, study, act. And so I think that any good lesson, right, first begins with its resources. And so I've been doing a little bit of research, searching, and then trying to figure out, of course, because there's always too much stuff, right? What is going to give teachers the most bang for their buck? And so I'm going to share my screen shortly and kind of walk you through a couple of strategies that I think are important. And okay, so we're going to jump in. I'm going to try to remember to explain what you see happening on every screen. And part of the benefit of this video, I hope, is that I'm hoping it's a good demonstration of a technique I learned a long time ago called a think aloud. Sometimes explaining something to somebody or writing it down on a piece of paper as a set of steps doesn't quite ring in the same way that teachers needed to resonate in a way that it's something that then they feel like they can take and do for themselves or do on their own. And so I'm just going to kind of model for you what this looks like for me. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. I promise you there's gonna be lots of screens and a little bit of craziness. Just kind of try to go with me a little bit on the adventure of the spaghetti in my head, so to speak. Okay. So I am going to share my screen. Right now, we'll go in and out of a few shared screens on today. And also sharing sound. Okay, so what you see, and for me, this is like sort of a pretty universal kind of thing. I joked with somebody very recently that I don't make new slide decks anymore. I made this template that you're looking at in terms of like color and style about 7 months ago for a recruitment event, and I loved it, and I felt like it spoke to sort of the colors and style that we're ultimately going for. And now just about every slide deck I use looks like that. And part of it, I mean, in my role, of course, as principal, is a matter of branding, but I think that can be equally powerful and equally true for your classroom, right? Kids know what your stuff looks like. They know where to look, for what they're looking for. They know how to get what they need, which minimizes the opportunity for kids who are not necessarily ready to learn to create chaos, right? So sort of this step one is what I refer to, like this whole sort of video is a think aloud, right? And how I plan professional learning, which is 129% based on how I planned even as a teacher and what I'm ultimately looking to help teachers be able to do effectively. So one, this is my think aloud for you on that. The other thing that we are, another strategy that we are looking at is called begin with the end in mind. And I'm sure it's something that people hear a lot, but don't necessarily think about in detail, right? And I think sometimes that becomes our challenge. So for me, I have some super new teachers. I have some long-term subs who just haven't had the benefit, right, of targeted pedagogical training, right? Like there's like overall theoretical, what do you think about children? What do you believe about learning kind of stuff, right? Which is super cool and it's fun when you're in school, but it does not teach you how to manage a classroom, for example, right? Like, and so for me, this is the goal of this professional learning cycle, because it won't be one PD. You see me working on PD number one for a one-on-one session that's going to be about 4 to 6 hours long. I know that sounds really crazy, but go with me. I think one of the great challenges in teaching as a field, right, is that we consistently ask people to do more stuff and never give them the time to do it, right? So when you hear me say that I'm going to have a 4 to 6 hour one-on-one with a teacher, I promise you I will not be cramming things down their throat for 4 to 6 hours. We're going to have some effective time, just time to spend together. We're actually going to walk and get coffee. That's actually how this PD is going to begin. In fact, you're going to see me build some slides for that in a minute. And then we're going to launch a PDSA cycle together. Okay, so as you can see on the screen, I've got my ready slide deck. I stole this from some slides I did for PD week, for academic day. What I'm thinking about as I work with teachers is I want them, every time they step in the classroom, to feel like they control the game, right? That is their classroom. I joked with somebody once that back when I was teaching in my younger years, before I had the wisdom I have now, I should tell kids, this is my classroom. And it is a dictatorship, not a democracy. You can call me Fidel Castro. You don't have to like it, but this is the way it is, right? I've evolved in my understanding of children relationships and classrooms since then, but that was kind of how I started. Control the game. I stole the name from Doug Lemoff's Teach Like a Champion. He is actually on edition number 3. And control the game, right? It's about how we move around the room, structure questions and activities so that we leave no room for shenanigans and chaos, right? Control the game. And so in this PDSA cycle with teachers, I need to discuss with them both pedagogy in terms of like classroom management structures and systems, right? And then I also need to discuss with them like pedagogical delivery. How do we deliver? How do we set kids up to be able to effectively access grade level information, even when we know that many of them are not necessarily on grade level, right? Which often feels a bit like a paradox for folks. So here we go. All right, so in order to begin with the end, we start with an objective, right? An objective, think of objective like a target. Boom, what is the thing that we need to hit today? Now, because I told you this session is going to be about 6 hours long, you will see that I have multiple targets. But for a typical class period, 85 to 90 minutes, 0 to 2 hours in a session, if it was PD, I usually only have 1, maybe 2, if like it's a second or third day of a series of PDs, right? Okay, so jumping in. So as you can see, this one is sort of my overall, this cute little funny square structure that you see here is what we call BELLS. Those are behavioral expectations for lifelong learners. And so you can see I'm welcoming my teacher. So it always starts with a greeting of some kind. And then it starts with an objective. As you can see, I'm probably still finessing this a little bit, but I started with the idea that teachers will engage in a PDSA protocol to determine the appropriate highest leverage area of focus to produce the desired academic and behavioral results in their classroom. Oops. In their classroom, as evidenced by meeting their SMART goals. Okay. In the process, or part of BELS is also your standards, right? Because my current organization does not have a teaching framework or teaching rubric, so to speak, that we subscribe to. I come from Green Dot Public Schools, where we had the College Ready Teaching Framework. When I first came to this organization, my old boss and I started discussing something called the Rigor, Relevance, and Relationships rubric. But teaching rubrics are the equivalents of standards for teaching, like you have Common Core math standards or English standards, etc. Right? Because we don't have those that the organization subscribes to, what I use instead are the mission, vision, and values. Right? And so in our mission, which for those of you who don't know me, you see me looking off to the side. You know already that this is because I am looking at my second screen, because I want to be able to tell you what these areas of the mission are, because I think that's important. I think that whenever we're working together, it becomes incumbent upon us to determine what exactly, right, are we, why bother doing this, and why did you pick this pathway, right? And so in our mission, parts A, B, and E are: A, provide a constructive project-based learning environment in which teachers guide students through active learning processes to develop conceptual understanding and critical thinking. B, establish a culture that puts students' relationships and social emotional support first, so that every student is known and gets the support they need to succeed. E, give faculty time, resources, autonomy, and a collaborative atmosphere to continually develop their skills, right? So this is mission A, B, and E. When we look at our vision, right, this choice of actions is about vision A, B, and E. A, we hold students to high expectations, right? That's why we're going to discuss classroom systems and structures, right? Vision B, we hold all students, we provide all students with a supportive community, right? Right. Safety and structure in a classroom is how children experience safety in a school environment, right? And then vision E, schools should prepare students to navigate the challenges, opportunities, and relationships they will encounter beyond our walls, right? And so teaching, again, right, as an art and a science is complex, right? Because you have, in an ideal world, you want to have a horizontal relationship with children, right? But the power dynamic in the room, right, also creates a vertical relationship. I think that's true when you're teaching. I think it's true when you manage folks, right? And there's always this sort of dance between those two types of relationships with students, especially when we're teaching cross-culturally, right? When we're teaching in a place that we did not come from, or a place we don't necessarily know well, where we're learning them like they're learning us, right? I think that building both simultaneously, right, is extremely important. This is the moment where I pull a quip from my old pastor from growing up, and he once said, "You cannot drive an 18-wheeler over a bamboo bridge." Right? Good teaching is complicated. Sometimes it's hard, and not just hard for the teacher, but hard for kids. Right? They're supposed to learn. They're supposed to be stretched, made uncomfortable, challenged with new things, confronted with things they don't know, and may not feel prepared for. Right? And that is tough. It's its own 18-wheeler. Right? If all we have in a classroom is sort of a vertical relationship, in that, right, it's a power dynamic. I'm the teacher and you're the student, right? It gets very, very difficult to drive, right? To drive the hard work of teaching up this, this straight wall, right? But when we also have a vertical relationship, when kids feel connected to us and we feel connected to them, and we built mutual respect, right? That vertical wall, right, begins to lean horizontally, right? And it gives us the kind of angle, right, that we could literally drive up, so to speak, as a bridge. And so systems and structures, content in a class, right, and then how we relate and cultivate community, right, come together, right, to create that bridge that kids need, right, so that they feel safe to try hard things, right, so they feel safe to be vulnerable when they don't know, safe to ask questions, all of those kinds of things. Sorry, small tangent. Okay. Also here, what you see is an ELD standard. Oh, sorry, come back to the screen. Also here you see an ELD standard. English language development standards are a required part of our education here in the state of California, because we have the privilege of serving learners from diverse places who are learning academic English language. I also think it's important though. Zwires talks about this. Some of the other sort of leading bigwigs in literacy also discuss this, right? That all students, for the most part, notwithstanding maybe those who come from really affluent communities, are academic English language learners, right? The kind of language that we learn in school is not the kind of language we typically learn at home unless we have highly educated parents, right? So as educators, we need to be prepared not just to teach kids the content, right, but the language of the content. Every content has its own language. And so what we want for kids, especially our kids who are second, third, or multi-language learners, right, is for them to be academically proficient in their ability, not just in writing or in doing math problems, but we want them to be able to speak the content, read the content, write the content, discuss the content. Right. And ELD standards help us do this. If you were to open the ELD standards right now, 11th and 12th grade part A is the expressive section of ELD standards. And so this is about ensuring that we create conversations and give students the opportunity to speak the language of the content, right? And so you'll see connected to that ELD standard is a language objective. Teachers will be able to think aloud and collaboratively produce a plan to create the desired classroom culture and learning. And so that's going to be the kind of the conversation we have. Also, what you see here on the bottom left is an agenda. So this is an overview of my entire day. Sometimes you'll see me do 2 slides. You'll see me do a plain agenda slide that usually has all this stuff on it, right? And then you'll see it come around over and over again as we work through what I would refer to as chunks of the day. As a matter of fact, what you're going to see me do right now is create my agenda slide because I kind of like those. You know what? I'm going to hold that. Maybe not an agenda slide. Let's leave that alone for now. Okay, so teachers are going to engage in a PDSA protocol. So first thing that we want to do, right, is just give ourselves some space. So like I told you, right, I don't start slide decks from scratch. So what I did, I actually copied some slides from PD day 1, right, and dropped them at the end of the deck, right? They're already pre-formatted and all of that. I just kind of picked the one that has the format of what I want to do right now, right? So I did that. I picked those, dropped those down there, copy one, put it right here, right? So the first thing that we're going to do is this, right? Somebody's like, what is a PDSA protocol / cycle? Right? I don't need that, right? Because it's a copy. And now I have a bunch of what I tend to do before I build a deck is I just start kind of ideating. That's what I like to call it. I think through like what are the objectives? What do I want to share with teachers? What I want them to be able to see, do, touch, feel? What do I want them to be able to take away from what it is that we are working on? And I found PDSA is actually a very popular sort of form of process improvement, right? It's a process improvement inquiry cycle. And so actually what I'm going to do on my right hand screen is grab a screenshot. I have a document that I found, a document that I really like. So I'm going to steal, as I express to people all the time, best teachers are great thieves. Uh, right? You see something good, you think it's going to work for your kids, you just go get it, right? So as you can see, I've stolen the picture. Um, and so like you guys saw, right? So I've got the small rectangle title up here, and the big rectangle down here, which you're also probably seeing right now. As you're like, you don't really need that, right? Love the fact that I can just kind of move that and make it what I want it to be. And so I want to front load for folks, right? What is a PDSA, right? This diagram, I love it and hate it, right? Because my first thought, right, is to start over here, but it doesn't. It actually starts right here, right, with the plan, right? And so when you think about planning, so when we're planning, and you'll see me looking over at some notes that I've gathered from several cycles, right? So planning requires this, right? One, state the question. What do we want or need to know? What problems are we solving? Right? In the plan, we have to develop a plan to resolve the problem, right? And then, so we have to develop the plan. Part of developing a plan, is, so once we know what the problem is, we start a plan. And then our plan is we need an objective, right? Once we know what our problem is, what is our objective, right? That's designed to solve the problem, right? B, once you know the objective, what kinds of tools, materials, etc. are needed, right? We want to make a plan to collect those, right? And then we want to plan data collection, right? How do we know, right? What do we need to have in order to know, right, that we have solved our problem, right, and followed our plan? And that's sort of the plan. In a plan, do, study, act, right? We're just gonna leave that there. I'm going to make this a lot bigger. Let's go with 16. And maybe spread it out a little bit. So in this particular version of the design, I'm designing with the expectation that we're probably going to write separately on paper. But at any time, of course, I can always, I'm famous for this. It's a notorious thing I do, right? I take a slide over here in the bar, I right click, right? It gives me this entire menu. In this menu, I can duplicate this slide, right? Boom. I don't have to redesign. I don't have to find new stuff. Like the design is already there, right? So what's our question? How while I am right, so my teacher and I are going to figure out what's the question, right? And we're going to put our questions over here, right? I immediately, one of the things I think that's really important when we design professional learning or learning opportunities for anybody, right, is that we have a system and structure for all of the things we want people to do, right? I can walk into a teacher and tell them, well, you need to do X better, right? But the question is immediately, well, how, right? And so what I love about a plan, do, study, act, right, is that it allows us to just sort of break down all the pieces and all the steps and walk through them together, right? So that teachers have an opportunity to have their questions answered, to think aloud, to have thought partnership, to collaborate, right? And then to be methodical, right? Once a school year starts, it becomes very hard to be metacognitive about teaching, right? To think about the teaching itself and not just about what to teach, right? But about how and why. And then what is needed in a classroom, right? And then it's a process. And great teachers that you will find is always happening, right? They teach a lesson this period and they're like, oh crap, this took too long. This this was shorter and less, but I needed to give them different directions, blah, blah, blah. And I joked with a teacher last week. I said, you know, your third and fourth period, like if you teach the same thing all day, your third and fourth period usually get the best version of every lesson because you've had a couple of rounds to practice, work out the kinks, make the adjustments, right? And by the time you get to round 3, like you are rocking and rolling, right? It's the best it's been all day. And I want teachers to feel comfortable with the fact that that's true for all of us. More than 20 years in, I think it's true for me now as it was 15 years ago, right? And so we just want to get comfortable with that. And I also want to give people the tools to be able to do that work, right? It's easy to look at something and be like, this isn't working. It is much more difficult to intentionally figure out why, right? My uncle is a mechanic. He's been a mechanic for 30 years. And he is one of the only people that I know, like the last time my car stopped, I called him and he said, what's wrong with it? And I was like, it's making this noise, right? And I tried to recreate the noise. He's like, put me on speakerphone, right? He's like, turn the key, right? And he listened to it on speakerphone. He was like, oh, that's your X, Y, and Z, do this, right? 30 years, right, has attuned his ear, right, to knowing what isn't working. But 30 years ago, he couldn't do that, right? I don't know if he could do it that way, that well 25 years ago, right? But the years of practice have sharpened his skill. And I think that's true for all of us. And I encourage all teachers and educators, right? That we're always sharpening our ear, right? And also adding tools to our tool belt. And so those are a couple of the goals that I'm working on as I work through this, right? So go back to my agenda. All right, so I don't know if I need a slide for my coffee walk, but maybe I do. I think I need a coffee walk slide because that's just fun, right? So I'm going to duplicate this slide again, as you saw me do before. Because the first thing that was really on here, right, is a coffee walk. You're going to see me take everything off of here. I go to my other screen because God bless 2 screens. I'm going to go to Google Images. Top right corner, hit images on Google, and then I just type in coffee. For those of you who want to be able to see that, I can screen share my other screen as well, over here, where I'm now looking for wonderful pictures of delicious coffee because I am a coffee connoisseur. Got one picture that kind of gives me everything I need. I'm going to copy it. So you saw me pick it, right click, copy the image, come back over here, paste the picture, right? Picture's the wrong size. I got all these cute edges here. I'm gonna just move it around until it does exactly what I would like it to do. Right. I'm also, one thing you also see me doing while I do this is try to work on timing. So my teacher and I are meeting, we're actually probably gonna meet at 8:20 once I'm done with getting kids in the classes. So from 8:20 to about 9 o'clock, we are just gonna go have coffee and we're gonna chat. Because before my teacher is a teacher, they are a human. And when things do not go the way we want, we have lots of feelings. And I want to take the time to find out how my teacher is feeling before we jump into this thing. So, okay, check, coffee walk, right? I'm gonna try to time these things together, but let's see what happens, right? We said 8:20 to 9. Okay, so then we're gonna hop into this great thing at probably 9:05. Yeah, gotta get people a bathroom break and all that. All right, so we're gonna do an intro. And then we're gonna do the part 1 of the plan, which are classroom glows and grows, right? So we now know what the PDSA protocol is, right? I'm actually gonna put intro on this slide so I don't forget what I'm doing, right? I like to line all the things up, right? Because one of the things I've learned, and I think this is probably true for any of us who've been doing something for a long time, we tend to skip steps. And the problem with skipping steps is not that it's not possible, it's that if the person that we are talking to is not, doesn't have the same experience that we have, we run the risk of tripping them, right? Hurting them or leaving them behind. So we want to be methodical about giving them steps that are bite-sized, well chunked, digestible, right? Because if not, all we do is stuff things down their throat and make them sick, metaphorically speaking, right? So this is an intro. So we know PDSA, protocol and cycle, is this. Our focus right now is the P in PDSA. In fact, if I want to make a point, well, I think that's kind of well pointed. But if there was no color here, all right, we're back. So the last time, a couple of moments ago, right, we set up our coffee walk slide, right? And then we talked about starting our PDSA protocol, right? And the first part of our plan, right, is to determine our glows and grows. And so what I've decided to do, right, as we talked about, make, right, bite-sized, easily chunked, easily digestible chunks, right? So after I did this slide, I think that, and stating the question is too much to leap into, right? I think there's a process that helps us get to the question. And there's two processes that I want to make. So I have this slide, I duplicated it, as you can see. One of the things I had mentioned to myself, right? And it's why I keep going back to this slide where I outlined my own thinking for myself, because I get excited, child, and I'll design this 7 different ways. But I want to stick to, right, what I decided. So I'm going to start with this, and I want to start with classroom grows and glows, right? There's never really a situation where there's not something to celebrate. And I think it's important for teachers to know how to do that with one another and for themselves. In order to get what I need now for this next slide for glows and grows, right, as you can imagine, my goal is sort of like a T-chart kind of situation, 2 columns, right? This is not the best format for that. So what you're going to see me do is take this slide and go to I think I'm going to format. Nope, I lied. Sorry, I'm going to slide. I'm going to apply a layout. I need a different structure on this slide. There is a slide with the title and 2 columns, which is what I really want. So now I have 2 columns where I can place information. And so what we want to know is glows and grows, right? This is also lovingly named roses and thorns, depending on where you are. And for the record, no matter what happens, no matter how bad a situation is, always start with the glows. Always start with what went well, because it 100% cushions what does not. And it makes that experience, the experience of that analysis, feel much more inviting than if you feel like all you get to do is talk about what doesn't work. Also, you can see I've got mismatched stuff here, of which I'm not a fan. So we're going to keep with this. That's Source Sans Pro. I'm going to go grab that and then make them the same size and bold so that we have the same thing. I also like to center stuff like that. So my fancy preferences here. And for whatever reason, that ink is not black, but it would be. All right, so roughly they're about the same. If you guys are like me and you don't have good depth perception, you can shift and hit both boxes so you can see if they're in the same place and if they're roughly the same size, right? So my teacher and I are going to start with glows and grows. And so as I think about once we do glows and grows, then I can, this is the place where I facilitate a conversation, where I'm going to ask a question like, what grow has the biggest impact on classroom instruction? Right? Or which, maybe, the question should be which grow or grows, right? I think there'll be 2 or 3. The biggest impact on classroom instruction. And so then there's going to be an ensuing conversation that I anticipate facilitating here at this spot, right? So now I'm gonna go back. I've done my coffee walk. My little intro for the PDSA is there, right? Working that out. I think these glows and grows, if we start at 9:15, let's give ourselves 15 minutes. Let's give ourselves time to think, to ponder, to sit and process. And so once we have selected our, right, so we have our glows and grows here. You're gonna see me do it again, right? Duplicate my fancy slide here. I'm just creating a place for us to identify, right, the grows that we are going to decide to focus on. But actually, before I get there, see, this is why this step thing is so important. I'm like, before I ask her to make that leap from which grows have the biggest impact on classroom instruction, I think I'm going to duplicate this again. And I think I'm going to, this is a place where we just kind of, structure our thinking, and get deep and get down into the weeds, right? So I'm actually going to take my question, right? Because I think it's important to record it, right? Most of this is Oswald normal. It's usually in about 40 on this size of slide. Maybe not. I was just playing. Also, it needs to be white so we can see it. Let's go down to 20 and see what we got. Oh, that's not big enough. Let's see. Yep. Maybe I was right. Kind of try to keep them in one row if I can. So which grows have the biggest impact on classroom instruction, right? So it'll be easy, right, for me to take them from the slide right before it, right, move them to here. And then this is going to lead us into our next chunk, right? Something is off here and I gotta figure out what it is. That's our sands. That's what's wrong. Oh, my bad. It should be Montserrat. Sorry, I need things to match. It's a whole thing in my mind. So we want to look at which grows have the biggest impact on classroom instruction. And then, right, we want to talk about why. That I wanted to fill the bar if I can. As you know, I like my pictures. So I'm going back to images to get something funky here to put in the top right corner. That's why not? Learning should be fun and sometimes a little whimsical. So I got my Y guy over here, right? And this is where we engage in a 5Y protocol. All right, I cheated a little bit, but I wanted to bring you to the finished product. particularly with the focus for beginning with the end in mind, and being able to think about the thinking that you want folks to do, your students to do, and how you want them to do that thinking, right? So I'm taking us back to our objective slide that says teachers will engage in a PDSA protocol to determine the appropriate highest leverage area of focus to produce the desired academic and behavioral results in their classroom as evidenced by meeting their SMART goals, right? So I know a couple of things. I know there's a protocol I want them to use, right? I know that at the end of that protocol, I want them to know what the high leverage area of focus is, right? And then I want them to have created goals of their own, right? Part of beginning with the end in mind, which is why we created an objective first. When you're creating assignments in a class, right? And for one, you should know that you can have more than one objective for a lesson. You can do one big objective with a bunch of small chunks, or you can do a smaller objective for each chunk of your lesson. This is sort of an overall, right? So this is sort of a big one. But what I wanted to show you is where I landed at the end, right? So we agree there's going to be a PDSA protocol. We're going to get to these highest leverage areas of focus, right? And SMART goals. So at the end, what you will find, actually, I'm going to walk you through, right? So we're here, we've done our check-in, and then these are the steps that we're going to follow, right? And notice that they are timed. Practicing the timing is important so that you can actually get through what you want to get through. It also helps you know if you plan too much stuff. Because nothing's worse, right, than like planning to have a project done by a certain time and then realizing that your timing's been off the whole time. Right, every time you plan for one lesson, it's end up being two, right? And so things take twice as long, which, you know, if that's what's necessary for learning, it's fine, but it's easier to manage if you know it ahead of time, right? And one of the ways to know that ahead of time, right, is to plan the timing while you're planning your lesson. So after our coffee walk, we're going to go over sort of in general what a PDSA protocol is and start with the big P. I'm going to walk them through an opportunity to reflect on their work in the classroom, what's going well, where are the areas of struggle. Then we're going to take the grows from this slide. I'm literally going to copy them and paste them on this next slide, right? And then we're going to narrow down which of them are the one or two that had the biggest impact on their classroom instruction, right? And we're going to take each of those. So there will probably be two of these, two YYY protocols. And there's probably going to be two of them because there's going to be one sort of for each impact we select, right? Whatever has the major impact is the thing we want to do a 5Y protocol on. For those of you who are unfamiliar, as we discussed before, 5Y protocol is a part of it's a root cause analysis. Those are the proper terms for it, right? It's how we get down to like what's causing the problem so that we can create solutions, right? We don't want to create solutions for symptoms. We want to create solutions for the actual problem. And 5Y helps us do that. So we'll do that twice, right? We'll take one of those, put it here, and then walk our way through. Why is this a problem? Why is that a problem? Why is it a problem? Until we get down to what we believe the root cause to be, right? We'll have two of those, and then we'll bring our root causes over here, right? Literally, we can just copy them and paste them and put them here. Because once we've identified our root causes, then we can discuss solutions. The way that I want people to think about solutions, when I did my last training on classroom management, we were talking about STOIC and CHAMPS. And STOIC is a sort of a larger framework for planning. It's another sort of smaller version, if you will, of a PDSA with a focus on schools, right? And so STOIC, right, which stands for structure, teach, observe, interact positively, and then what's the consequence, right? When there's no structure, when we don't teach a certain thing, we observe what. How does that impact interacting positively? What's the consequence? In the STOIC framework, a consequence can be good or bad. It's just sort of the outcome of the other things that come before it, right? But what we want to be able to do at the end, after we've identified root causes, like we talked about, right? We take our root causes and we drop them here and we ask, right? What is this root cause impacted by? Is there a lack of structure for this thing? Did we not teach kids how to do this thing? What have we observed, right? What do we know so far? And I'm pretty sure that once we get down the roots in education, there's only a handful of roots, to sort of work from, right? And usually it's in the structure or the teach. And once we can determine what category it fits in, right, then we can start generating solutions, right? And so we'll drop our root cause here, figure out what category it fits in, and then we'll generate solutions. And then once we do that, we're going to take our solutions, right? Again, I'm the copy and paste queen, so we can copy them from here, and we can paste them here. And then what's the goal, right? We believe we have a problem. Now we have a solution. What's the goal, right? Because we can implement a solution, but without a goal, we can't determine whether or not it's working. Does that make sense, right? So if we say, we get down to the problem is the kids, come into class kind of crazy, right? And we decide that the root cause of that is because I don't meet them at the door and set expectations, right? So our solution can be, I'm going to meet them at the door and state expectations, but what's the goal, right? Is it just for them to come in quiet, or is the goal bigger than that, right? And it's going to be up to the teacher, which is great because I want them to create goals that feel doable and manageable to them. And one of the important things about a SMART goal, right, is that a SMART goal has to be specific. It also has to be measurable and time bound, right? And so these SMART goals in particular, we want this to be something that we can measure in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks, right? And then once we have solutions and SMART goals, right, then we want to, again, right, we're going to pull this solution or goal, and then we're going to drop tools. Right. So then we're going to have like, what tools do we need in order to enact these solutions? And then what's our next step in regards to that? Right. And so as far as I know, as I go back up to my bells, right, they will have gone through the P in the PDSA protocol, determining the highest leverage area to focus on. Right. It's from the glows and grows to the 5 whys. Right. Actually, see, and that's the other thing about getting to the end, right, is then you go back and you retool, right? So you're going to see me change this now. Teachers will engage in a PDSA protocol to determine the root causes of the challenges most impacting their classrooms and to produce the desired academic and behavioral results. As evidenced by meeting their SMART goals, right? So the more we build the steps, the clearer our goals get, right? But we saw it in there, right? The P in the PDSA protocol is there. We have an opportunity to determine the root causes. We have the opportunity to filter those, right? Which ones are most impactful, right? And then to think about, well, what is it that we really want, right? And then we're going to put that stuff together. Hopefully this has been a little bit helpful, beginning with the end in mind, how to create bells to do that, how to work on the timing and the pulling of things together, and a couple of quick techie things about copy paste and do not rebuild the wheel. Hope this has been helpful. See you later.